So for everyone online, just a reminder, we are getting set up to do some 3D background stuff. So this is always kind of a neat feature. It was long requested to be able to do this. So we're going to pop up just a brief presentation about 3D backgrounds, and then we'll do a live demo because I've already got something pulled up for you. So let me go ahead and hide my stuff, and I will bring up the presentation here. So let's see if this actually works. Great. So hopefully everybody can see what's going on online. And here we go. Okay. So again, OpenVSP has had the ability to display a background image essentially in the window itself to help guide the creation of the model, but it was up to you to try and set, say, the zoom, the panning, centering everything up, and forcing everything to be locked and keep everything relative to your model. And so it was very useful. You could certainly do it, and it was a great feature, but it had some drawbacks, and it's that the background images themselves didn't exist essentially with the model in 3D space. It was just a rendered image in the workspace behind everything else that was going on. So to address this, 3D backgrounds were implemented, I guess a couple years ago. Gosh, it was maybe it's 3 years ago. Too far. My apologies. Let me step back. So the workflow here is that within the window itself, you're going to choose the image that you want. You can control the display of it, so the transparency of the image, flip it, rotate it, make sure that everything is oriented relative to your model. You can choose the 2D reference point in the image itself. So you can see this kind of point right here that tells you where you are relative to this background image. You can also set the 3D position, so whether you're top view, front view, side view, where that is in the model itself, as well as the orientation, and you can scale it and set everything up the way that you want it to be. So the way to introduce kind of the GUI or the user interface that we will look at here in just a while, if you bring up the background 3D window, you can add, delete, show, hide, all of that from up here in this main 3D background window. The image itself, you get to choose by clicking Browse, and it will tell you the file path and what one you're actually working on. And you can also preview this image, so it will bring up a small 2D render of the image itself. Modify it so you can rotate, set the transparency, flip left and right, up, down locations, change the reference point, change when and how everything is visible, choose the orientation of this. And so this is kind of where you're aligning it with the rest of the model. And down below here, you can choose to either have a default view based on, say, OpenVSP standard view of top, left, front, back, whatever, or you can set up essentially your vector and you can point it off at different directions. The scale, you can choose which of these parameters that you want to use, including the resolution of your model or your image, and then the placement within the model itself. And so a lot of this will make more sense when we get to the demo side of things, but this is just an overlay of the user interface itself. So again, as with many new features in OpenVSP, it has been added into the API. So this is an example of some of the calls and functions that you can use in order to set backgrounds. So for example, showing all the backgrounds, getting the relative paths so that you can set that stuff. Now, the relative paths are relative to your VSP3 model. It's not relative to, your VSP home or your working directory, anything like that. So if the model hasn't been saved, the paths are completely meaningless. It has no point of reference to move on from there. And so, as promised, that was short and sweet. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of the presentation here and bring up some of my other windows. And while we're at it, if there are any questions in the chat, Rob is responding live, or if there's a question that I can answer, I'm happy to do so. But let me go ahead and bring up OpenVSP, and then we can go ahead and proceed with a live demo. All right. So just for fun, as I guess a preliminary, we're going to open one of the examples that we've got. So let's go straight to this, and we're going to look at, in this case, notional Boeing 737-800 with 3D backgrounds in it. And so you'll notice that because I loaded this in and I moved the file, all of these that I had set up, now it has no idea where the images are. So it just renders them black. So we're going to fix that. We're going to come to Model. Actually, we're going to go to Window. We're going to come to 3D Background. And so here we've got that user interface. So the top view, here we've got images, etc., etc. So we're going to browse for that. We need to come and try and find this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back. I have too many favorites. I'm going to go into here, example aircraft, nope, tutorial models. Here we go. So in this case, we're doing our top view. Okay, we'll have to fix that. Our side view, we're going to browse for that one here. Okay, and our front view, again, browse, we're going to pick our front view, accept. Now, you'll notice that even though we have these loaded in here, things are in a bit of a different orientation than I really meant them to be. So let's start with the top view. We're going to move that off. You know what? I'm just going to turn off the visibility on the side and the front. Okay. So notice that if we have our top view here, it's confused. It thinks that it's supposed to be left aligned. Well, we don't want that. We want it to be the top view. Okay. So at least now we're looking essentially in the same plane. Great. But it's rotated. It's kind of in the wrong spot. It's probably a little bit in the wrong scale. So we're going to go to our rotate. We're just going to do a 90-degree clockwise rotation. Great. And again, here's that preview button. So there's that center that you can see right there. So relative to what we have, you note that that would be right down here somewhere. So because we have on our top view, the horizontal is set to left, vertical is in the middle. What we'd rather have, I think, is that the vertical or the horizontal should be center, and the vertical then should probably be in the top. So now our reference is right up here on the nose. Now that's getting us pretty close to what we want. Now the trick, now that we have that set up, is to make sure that our scale is appropriate. So you notice that this happens to be pulled from a essentially an airport planning document that has a few aircraft. It shows you notional dimensions on everything. That's what I used for this example in the OpenVSP ground school. So in this case, we can adjust the scale of this model by trimming this down. So again here, this is where this range is going to help us quite a lot because we need to shrink this down. So if we blow it up just a little bit, we can start to line these things up, and that looks pretty good. Now the great thing about this is I can zoom, I can pan, I can do whatever I want, and that background moves with this model. So gone are the days where you had to fix your aircraft on a screen and snap it to it and save the view, or otherwise you were completely hosed and you had to do that again. It stays put, and it's a really handy feature. So I think instead of our placement that we have there, we know we kind of need it to be nudged back just a little bit, and we might need to move that a little bit in Y. Now, again, the directions here are in your model coordinate system. So X, Y, and then Z is up, down. So we can play around with some of our scale and get everything just right. So now we have our aircraft, and all of this is essentially set up. Because the depth here is set to free, I can move this around wherever I want. I can set it up high. I can put it way down below. I can set it kind of smack in the middle of the model if I want and set this to 0. Doesn't really matter. So another really handy thing with these 3D backgrounds is if this is cumbersome and it's messy and you can't see your aircraft when you're looking at it at an angle like this, well, that's not really what you want. So why don't we change with some of the visibility? So instead of seeing both sides, we turn that off, and it's only visible when it's essentially in the positive orientation. So from the top down, you can see it, and it turns off from the bottom. Pretty cool. But let's take this a step further. What if we only wanted to see this when we were within, say, 5 degrees of the top view? So now, if we rotate off of that particular view, and again, this is just 5 degrees off from essentially the z-axis or the normal vector here. So if you're aligned in a top-down view, it pops up, it shows you where you are. If I rotate, change this view at all, it disappears. It doesn't change, it doesn't move the path, everything is right where it is, and it continues to move with your model. It is only visible whenever you are in an appropriate orientation to make use of that cross-section. So really, really powerful capabilities here when you're trying to build up against, say, a 3-view drawing, photographs, you name it. So because we can essentially set the placement or the direction at any direction, any angle, any scale, if you have a picture of an aircraft and you know that it happens to be at this weird angle, sure, put that as your background, orient it relative to that angle, and then you can size your aircraft as if you were looking straight through the wireframe at the background image. And again, it moves with it. So really, really cool stuff here. So I'm going to turn that off and leave both sides. So here we've got this one kind of floating around. This side, same thing. We're going to turn the visibility on, but it's clearly very confused. It thinks it's a top view, when really we want that to be a left view. We're going to turn off or disable that rotation there. Okay, we're going to jump to a left-hand view and make sure we can align everything. With our preview button once again, we see that it thinks that the center of this is over here. That's not really what we want. So let's set the center of this to the left and the vertical in the middle. That works just fine, I think. Now we're going to drag this back. Let's maybe set it to 0. Then we can go a little bit more negative. Line up the noses. Okay. Clearly we need to adjust the scale here. So we're going to up this a bit more. Nudge the nose. Bump the scale until we're just about where we need to be. Now again, this is all set to free. If we did something like before, notice that the Y is disabled. It turns it off completely. So before means that it places it some distance away from your model and it sends it all the way out here. If you set it to free, you can adjust where that is. Again, let's jump back to a side view here. So we need to nudge this up in Z so we can line our nose up. Not too bad. And if we wanted to, we could adjust the scale just a little bit more, but you get the idea. So again, because we have this all set up, we can do the exact same thing. Set the tolerance to, say, when aligned, 10 degrees. We come off of that, it disappears. We can set it back up, and it stays on. 10 degrees, as you can see, is an awful lot. That's probably more than you really want. Maybe 1 degree is probably better, but sometimes that's kind of hard to hit. It's really up to you. Let's snap to a left-hand view. Okay, so again, here we go. We've got that set up. Set this to free. If I want to, I can set this cross-section straight down the middle of the aircraft. So if I happen to come in here and I knew that line was there, well, maybe I need to nudge the height of my fuselage, or maybe I'm not really satisfied with where my vertical tail is hitting and I want to adjust that somewhat. All of this stuff, again, moves around with it. So if you have a pre-existing line drawing, images, again, exceptionally useful to have this. Same thing goes for the front view. That one happened to stick kind of where we wanted it. I left it way there in the back. We jump to a front view for this aircraft. it scaled it, had all the parameters where it needed to be, so most things are still aligned. We can do the exact same thing, but we don't need to belabor the point. Everything's lined up, same controls, same placement. Everything else just kind of works. So that is an example of 3D cross sections, and I'm going to save that just in case it completely forgets where those files go. Let's see. Not seeing any updates in the chat. Rob, has anything popped up that we need to address in the meantime here? Or is there anything else you'd like to show?
I haven't seen any questions about this capability, and I think you did a really nice demo of it. Yeah, I think you covered it.
Okay. Well,
that puts us a little bit ahead of schedule. I don't think we want to jump ahead of schedule, so I think we can just wait for the next talk to start at 10:30. If you don't have, yeah, I guess you could open up a different model, but that had 3D backgrounds if you had one ready. But otherwise, I think you're good to go.
Okay. Well, when stuff like this usually happens in a live workshop, we'll either, have a little breakout session or talk to folks. The chat seems to be doing a really good job with that. If there are, short demonstrations or little things that maybe didn't make it into the agenda that we want to just do a quick demo of to have on the record, we can certainly do that. And if you have something that you'd like to see, just please post it in the chat, let us know, and we can do let's see, is there a way to rotate the image with a custom angle? Yes. So let's take this front view as an example, let's say. Instead of these standard definitions, let's choose other. Okay, so it picked it up, but notice that as soon as I did that, the X normal flipped. Okay, so we can pick some other directions here. So now my X normal is 1. If I want to change that somehow, let's say I want to rotate it around. So now I'm changing the Y normal. I'm picking the vector that I want to use. So here we've got it pretty much at a 45 degree. And again, we can set this to any XYZ vector as its reference here. And so you can also, of course, rotate these. So this is, X rotation, Y, Z rotation. You're rotating, I think, kind of about these axes. So if we, let's say, go back to 0 and 0 here, where we're mostly aligned, and here I've got the rotation's all kind of screwy. But let's settle these back to 0. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes, you can absolutely set. That was not what I wanted to do. I think I broke it.
If the question was about rotating the image in image space, kind of like that, the 90, 180, 270, then no, we don't have the ability to rotate the image in pixel coordinates in image space. And basically that decision was just made because we didn't want to duplicate the entire capabilities of Photoshop. We had to draw the line somewhere at user interface complexity and everything else. And so certainly it seemed like, being able to rotate 90, 180, 270 was going to be a very common use case. Every file is going to come in with a different orientation. But, being able to rotate an image 2.73 degrees was something that you need to do in Photoshop or GIMP.